Vikings and Viking history in general are currently at an all-time high in terms of mainstream popularity and interest thanks to hit shows like The Vikings, Last Kingdom, and Vikings Valhalla. But this interest hasn't really resulted over to the large screen in the release of new epic historical films set in the Viking world. Therefore, we will be diving into the past to unveil my recommendations of the top 10 Viking movies you need to watch. But before we begin, don't forget, if you love anything to do with historical movies and historical TV shows, then subscribe to my channel, History Spark. At number 10, it is Beowulf and Grendel, a 2005 historical fantasy adventure based around the Anglo-Saxon epic poem Beowulf. Beowulf and Grendel stars Gerard Butler and Stellan Skarsgård, so the acting here is decent, but definitely not the best work of either one of their careers. The storyline is serviceable and depicts the poem well enough, and the costume design and set pieces are great as well. If you can ignore the flaws such as no character development and some pointless subplots, then watching Beowulf and Grendel might be a great way to pass away a few hours and get a light Vikings adventure in. At number 9, it is When the Raven Flies, an Icelandic Viking saga which tells the decades-long revenge tale of a character referred to simply as Gestur, as he seeks to kill and destroy the two Vikings that raided his village as a child and killed his parents and also kidnapped his sister. This movie does have a very limited budget, but it is definitely better than your standard B-grade film, as When the Raven Flies benefits from a really engaging storyline, a great musical score, and some decent pacing. The series does lack a bit in the acting department and overall production value, but When the Raven Flies is one of the most underrated Viking films out there, and if you can grab a copy of it, I highly recommend you watch it. At number 8, it is Valhalla Rising, a Scandinavian adventure set during the 11th century, in which a fierce pagan warrior named One-Eye escapes captivity and eventually joins forces with some crusaders trying to get to the Holy Land. But they end up in an unknown island where they have to fight for survival against a number of hidden and secret forces. This movie stars Mads Mikkelsen, and any period piece featuring him is one worth watching in my opinion. And Valhalla Rising is no exception, as One-Eye is the main glue that holds this movie together, as the story can be a little bit slow at times. But if you live in America or the UK, you can watch this movie for free on an app called Freevee on Amazon Prime Video. So Valhalla Rising is definitely a strong recommendation for me, for anyone looking for a unique and thrilling Viking-inspired adventure. At number 7, it is The Last King, a Norwegian historical film which tells the story of two fictitious Vikings who are tasked with protecting the life of the infant Hakon's son, who is the true heir to the throne after the baby's father, King Hakon, gets murdered during the Civil War of Norway in the 13th century. The Last King has a very basic and simple story which is easy enough to follow, and the acting is decent as well. This historical film does stumble with pacing as well as a subpar primary antagonist, but if you want to watch a medieval and Viking inspired game of cat and mouse, then The Last King is the perfect fit for you. At number 6, it is Northmen, a Viking saga which tells the brutal and action-filled story of a group of Vikings who end up stranded on a mysterious island, and they end up having to fight for their survival after they unknowingly kidnap the king's daughter. Northmen, a Viking saga, is focused on one singular motive, and that is to give the viewer as many epic and brutal fights that it possibly can within a 90-minute runtime. There is a very loose and poorly told story here, and character development is non-existent. But there are also some amazing battle sequences, great cinematography, and production design which will more than make up for the shortcomings of this film. So for any viewer who is keen to watch a mindless Viking-inspired action drama, The Northmen, a Viking saga is my recommendation for you. At number 5, it is The 13th Warrior, which tells the story of Ahmed ibn Fadlan, an exiled Arab ambassador who through a series of misfortunes finds himself forced to join a band of Vikings as their 13th warrior to battle against a supernatural force in a distant Viking land. The 13th Warrior is one of the few Viking films which has become more popular in recent years than when it initially got released, as this historical movie was a huge box office bomb during its initial run, but it is fondly remembered as a great Viking action adventure by fans today. So if you're looking for a historical drama with an engaging plot, great action scenes, and some decent acting across the board, but a film that has issues with pacing and sequencing, then The 13th Warrior is the film for you. At number 4 is The Last Kingdom: Seven Kings Must Die, which is the conclusion to the amazing Last Kingdom TV series, with the primary focus being on King Athelstan trying to consolidate his power and the Battle of Brunanburh, which sees King Athelstan battling against a formidable force including the King of Scotland, many other lords and noblemen, some of which are Vikings. It is great to see Uhtred and co again, and the movie is very interesting, but it is far too rapid paced, and it tries to fit a season worth of material into just a few hours, which it doesn't pull off well at all. But overall, it is still one of the best Viking films ever created, and I do think all fans of The Last Kingdom will really enjoy The Last Kingdom: Seven Kings Must Die, as it does wrap up Uhtred's story pretty well in my opinion. At number 3, it is The Long Ships, which tells the story of a Moorish king and a group of Vikings who are both trying to retrieve a mythical bell referred to as the Mother of All Voices, which would greatly enhance the reputation and wealth of whoever were to possess such an item. This is not your standard run-of-the-mill treasure hunt type of Viking expedition though, as there is a fascinating story here which does a great job of blending Viking culture, superstition, and naval prowess within the film. The storyline here is surprisingly good and filled with lots of plot twists, and the main characters are very engaging and intriguing. But of course, the visuals are outdated by today's standards and the production quality is not the greatest either. But if you're looking for a unique spin on Viking movies, then The Long Ships is the film for you. At number 2, it is The Vikings, the classic 1958 movie, which tells the story of two Vikings, Einar and Eric, who are at different ends of the social spectrum, but are both trying to win the vacant throne of Northumbria and also convince a beautiful princess to become their betrothed. The Vikings is a very unique and surprisingly realistic look at Viking culture and the brutality of a Viking conquest. The film benefits from great acting, especially by the two leads, Kirk Douglas and Tony Curtis, and the set pieces, costume design are all spectacular, especially when you consider the age of this film. This movie holds up surprisingly well even by today's standards. The plot is a bit shaky at times and the film is slowed down by some needless side plots, but overall, if you're looking for a classic Viking inspired adventure, then The Vikings is my recommendation for you. The top spot on this list goes to The Northman, the newest and arguably the best mainstream Viking based historical film ever released. The Northman is primarily a revenge tale, and it tells the story of Prince Amaleth and his cunning plan to defeat his uncle who killed his father and forced Prince Amaleth to flee from his home when he was just a child. The Northman starts off as a grand spectacle and quickly turns into a slow and snail-paced story about Prince Amaleth slowly trying to break down his uncle's power and influence from the inside. The story and pacing are definitely the two weakest elements of the film, and The Northman drags on for far too long. But the stellar acting of Alexander Skarsgård and the cinematography and production quality of the film are definitely where this movie shines. The Northman is a simple enough film with some oddly confusing Viking mythology tidbits sprinkled in that is, although flawed, still the best depiction of Viking society we have seen on the big screen so far. So let me know in the comments down below if you agree with my top 10 recommendations of the best Viking films created so far, and if there are any other great Viking films I might have missed out on. And remember to stay up to date with everything to do with historical movies and historical TV shows, then subscribe to my channel History Spark, and thank you so much for watching. Have a great day. Bye.